I mean, I'm living in Indonesia now. That's my most recent move, and it's probably freshest in my mind. So let's go Indonesia.
Okay. So let's do Indonesia then. The first question that I have is about cultural adjustment. What took you a while to adapt in Indonesia, for example?
I mean, Indonesians are incredibly friendly. And to say the one thing is that I drive here, and if you come from a European country, learning the local driving culture is really interesting because you just have to adapt, you know, and people might be aware of what it's like in Southeast Asia driving. And Indonesia is no different. You know, there is a beauty in the chaos, I would say, and it works somehow, you know, but you have to be willing to adapt to that because they're not going to adapt to you as the foreigner. You have to adapt to the local driving culture. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. And you see some interesting things on the road here, but it's fantastic.
Nice. What about social life? Like, how do you meet friends in Indonesia?
So in Jogja, one of the challenges is there's not a huge expat community here. There's a lot of retirees, you know, a lot of Dutch people. So there's a small community, but there are not many people in our age group. There's a few, which we've met through Facebook groups. You know, there's like a WhatsApp group here. So we met a few expats through that. But we've also got local friends. You know, I go to a gym, I play soccer, football, met some people through that as well. So we've got both.
Nice. You touched it before. You said you tried to learn the language. You're speaking Bahasa. What are you trying to? Any learning tips that you want to give?
I mean, English is not widely spoken in Jogja. It's Bahasa Indonesia, you know, which in all intents and purposes of all the Southeast Asian language is probably the easiest one to learn and pick up. So we've been easily picked up, you know, probably a couple hundred words of vocabulary easily that we can use every day. I think we should be learning more. You know, we use Duolingo. At some point, we'd love to get a tutor in, but yeah, you can also get by the day-to-day stuff. Google Translate, you know, it's so easy these days, just to sort of get some level of communication between, you know, you and somebody.
Makes sense. You already touched that one also, but I mean, compared to Singapore, everything is cheap probably, but the cost of living of Indonesia right now, what it's like I don't know, what is surprisingly cheap, what is expensive, what's the cost of normal living per month?
I mean, we probably spend, in terms of US dollars, $1,500 to $2,000 a month for our expenses. That includes rent. We have a small hire car and our food and just activities. So that's kind of our average. I mean, to give your listeners a sort of the big surprising statistic that always gets us is that here, in Singapore, we had like a 3-bedroom condo that we had. And here we have like a really lovely, like 3-4 bedroom house with a little private pool in a little sort of thing. And the cost of 1 month's rent in Singapore will get us this place in Jogja for about a year. So 1 month in Singapore rent is about a year's worth of rent in Jogja, approximately. So that's the level. Yeah. And just everyday living, food is super cheap. Fuel is super cheap. And so, yeah, it's good.
Nice. You talk about the home. So finding a home, how do you find apartments? What is the hardest part of the process?
Yeah, so that was my job when we first did our little recce trip. We had 6 months before we wanted to move here, and so I went around. And our first instance was like, oh, we're going to try and contact Airbnbs and see whether they want a long-term rental. And surprisingly, they all went, no, whatever our price is for like 1 month, you just pay the same price for 12 months. And we were like, okay, that's not a good deal. But so I just found various Facebook groups I was looking on for ages, and we got lucky and found this place and contacted the owner, and they were actually Balinese, so they spoke great English and they're really friendly. And so it's great to be able to communicate in our language with our landlords. And so, yeah, we found it. But a lot of people, we have a WhatsApp group with all the expats here and local people. They some say, hey, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom here, and people are helping out. And again, Facebook, WhatsApp groups, Telegram. There are like websites, but if you don't speak the local language, they're a lot harder to navigate.
Okay. So definitely community searching, let's say like this.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. What about living like a local? What's the way of blending in, let's say like this, as an expat in Indonesia?
I mean, it's hard. Okay, first off, it is hard to blend in like an Indonesian when, you know, you're what we call a boulet, walking around, sort of
Yes.
foreigner, a white person. But, one of the things I love here is, again, going back to the driving thing, is that you pull up to an intersection and you've got all these guys who are unofficial. They just wear like a, high vis vest and they'll stop
Hmm.
the traffic for you, And so basically the local culture is that you've got spare change, small denominations of notes. You just give these guys basically like 20 cents, 15 cents worth of currency. And they're kind of they're almost on every street corner, and they're stopping traffic to let people get on because it's
Uh,
crazy traffic. And so that was kind of for me like, great, so that's a great idea, helping these guys out and they're doing you a service.
so now you are doing the same, stopping traffic.
Oh, no, I'm not doing that. I think it'd be like, not well accepted, but I definitely support them.
Nice. The next one, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit difficult. It's work life. Probably you don't have it because you still work with the Singaporean and companies and so on. But maybe you have contexts that explain you a little bit how the work culture is in Indonesia right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy like you look at a place like Japan or Singapore or Hong Kong where they work people to the bone. It's probably not that kind of high intensity environment. But I will say that the place that's worth noting about Jogja and probably Indonesia in general, that the wages are lower for sure than places like Singapore and Europe and things like that. So, yeah. Well, I mean, especially in Jogja, it's kind of a bit of the working wages are very low compared to the rest of the country. So if you do come here looking for a local job, just be prepared for that.
Okay. You also said multiple times you drive,
Yeah.
but what is the best way of getting around in Indonesia actually? Is it really driving or there is other means of transportation?
I mean, it depends on your risk appetite. The fastest way to get around is with a motorbike, or a scooter. And a lot of people have so many scooters on the road here. And a lot of expats will ride a scooter as well. And if you're comfortable riding a scooter and you're, as I said, kind of used to the local flow of things, that's probably the fast way to get around. We drive, because it's safer in a bigger sense. But if you're we live just outside the sort of main city. Within the city, they've got a pretty good bus system that you can get around. And if you need to go wider outside of Jogja to Jakarta, Java has a really good rail system, so you can take the train as well. They're quite nice as well, actually.
Yeah, you touched the going with motorbike and tourist, which is the typical end of ending in a healthcare hospital. So let's touch directly the next one, which would be healthcare. How does the system work? It's easy to access. Is it good quality?
So, touch wood, my wife and I haven't had to use the hospital system in like a real emergency kind of situation. So again, touching wood, crossing fingers and toes and whatever. But we have used it for minor stuff. So there are private hospitals here that are pretty good. So two big ones in Jogja. I guess one's is a Muslim hospital and one's a Christian hospital. Both are excellent that we use. And we also have international insurance. So we have Bupa insurance that kind of covers us for wherever we are. So we can use the local hospitals here. If we have some really serious issues, we can fly to Singapore or, places like Bangkok where you have, maybe a more robust system, or even Jakarta has a pretty good set of category 4, I think, hospitals as well.
Nice. Next one, it's also related with system. The bureaucracy, dealing with paperwork, you pass through visas, you said that you research how to do visas, how do you deal with permits, how is all that?
So we did all of our visa and permitting through a visa agent. So we paid them a fee and they basically took care of the entire bureaucracy for us. It is possible to do it on your own, again, but since it's not as accessible if you don't speak the language and you don't have the ins and outs, and we didn't want to take a risk and have it rejected or denied for, as we all know, sometimes we just forget a stamp or a piece of paper or whatever, and then your entire application gets rejected, and you don't understand why. So we went through a pretty well-respected agent, and they were brilliant, and they helped us with everything. You obviously have to pay for that service. It's part of it, but it comes with a lot of advantages as well, that, you're pretty much guaranteed to get your visa once you've sort of all up. You've kind of given them the details and paid your fees and whatnot. So it was fairly smooth, I would say. Little bits of, the only difference is that there isn't a huge visa company base in Jogja itself. We went through a Bali agent and they had to sort of like work out how to help us with a different place. And if we went to Jakarta or Bali, it'd be super easy, but Jogja was sort of one step of extra sort of administrative work. But in the end, it was fine. We got there in the end.
Nice. The next one, it's the best and worst. What is the best thing of living in Indonesia? What is the worst thing of living in Indonesia?
I mean, for us, the best thing about living here is the reason that we came is, we have access to so much natural beauty and wonder. Within an hour's drive, we can drive up to an active volcano and go hiking. We can go exploring rice paddies in the west side of the town. There's like river caves that we can go trampsing through for on the other side of town. And then a couple hours south is like the coastline with rugged, beaches and all that. So we're just spoiled for, natural beauty and wonder. And you just go for a hike and you're seeing, wildlife and all these things. Just it's a cliche, but nature therapy. You could just go for a walk in vast wilderness, and it is so good for you and for your soul and however you want to talk it. But I think for us, that was the main reason that we came here, and it hasn't disappointed.
What about the worst?
Yeah, the worst. I mean, again, I would love it if there was a larger expat community here. Just having that level of a few other people from they're on the same age group and same interests and stuff. Again, not an issue. We got loads of local friends and stuff, and I play soccer and football with these guys, and they're great fun. But it would be cool to have like a larger community here. But you can't have everything. You got to sacrifice in some areas. Yeah.
The last one that I have, it's the top tip. If someone is willing to move to Indonesia, what is your one-line advice that you would give them?
I mean, the one line of advice that I'd give to anyone, and it doesn't really only necessarily apply to Indonesia, it kind of applies to anywhere you go, is that embrace the culture. Wherever you go, don't try and impose your culture on wherever you're trying to live. Try and get there, learn how they work, learn the local culture, and just embrace it. Kind of bring it into your own world, because it's a great way to live. You learn new things about yourself, about a new culture, new people, new language, and it's exciting. And I think there are aspects of your own culture which you can see that fit, within the local stuff. So we eat local food all the time, but we've also found a few little like delis which serve like foreigner stuff. So every once in a while we'll go and get like some home comforts. My wife loves baking. She'll get like poppy seeds and stuff and make like a nice sort of, because she's also half Hungarian, she'll make like a Hungarian poppy seed cake and that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I think just generally just go with the flow. Don't try and flow against it, because everywhere has their own way of doing things. And you'll just have to embrace it.